watch something a second time, you get a completely different perspective of the first time you saw it. Well, after the first time you saw it. I actually did watch the fourth chapter of Riverdale at the night that it actually did air. And I did already film a video on it, but of course I was too exhausted to edit it. But then I started thinking, why don't I just go back and watch it again? Maybe there's some things that I've missed, and maybe my overall feelings the first time will be different the second time. It wasn't. My overall feelings the first time was this was an average episode. It wasn't anything that was spellbounding or just like, oh my gosh. But it was still an amazing episode. But there were a lot of things that I actually did catch after watching it a second time that kind of gets me a little bit intrigued. Now, the biggest problem that they had with chapter 4 is the fact that it was not like chapter 3. In chapter 3, they were able to merge not only the main plot in other words, they were able to take the subplot, which was pretty much how girls were getting slut shamed by the football team, and how Jason Blossom was a part of it, and then also how, I think his name was Chuck, how he was pretty much slut shaming a lot of these girls, and they had a book, and they were pretty much keeping record. And I explained this in my last review. Now they were able to merge the main plot with Jason Blossom's murder and with the subplot and still give it some relevancy. And also, it was not only an interesting story for girls that have gone through it, it still kind of remained steadfast to the main plot, and it didn't deviate from that. And that was good. It was still an amazing episode. But with chapter 4, I think they tried to do the same exact formula this time, and it just didn't work. What I would have been happy with if they actually just took the main plot away for a while and then came back in maybe in chapter 5 or chapter 6. Because this subplot here definitely was Grundy heavy. It was all about who Miss Grundy was, what was she hiding, and then we ended up finding out in this episode that her name was Jennifer Gibson. Now, here's my gripe about this. Now, I know it's like standard 80s or 90s sitcom, how they ended up finding something detrimental to the family or to this person underneath that individual's bed or in the drawer. It is so typical of a 90s sitcom or maybe an old school sitcom. But I'm going to be real with you. If you have a gun, like a freaking revolver, and your driver's license and a lockbox, and you have a house, why not put it in the house? I'm just saying, Miss Grundy had her own home. She could have stuck it in there and hid it from everybody, and maybe they could stretch it along. Unless they decide to 86 the whole Miss Grundy character altogether with the whole, scandalous affair. Maybe it got too much for viewers, maybe viewers complained, and maybe they just wanted it gone. And that's probably why they 86'd it so early in season 1. Now, when it came to the whole sob story about Miss Grundy and why she did what she did and why her name was changed, I know a lot of guys and maybe some women will probably be sympathetic towards that, but I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of women that watched this episode was like, oh, please. Like, seriously, I was one of them. Seriously. I was like, yeah, freaking right. If you buy that garbage, then you're definitely sprung. And I'm going to go into Archie's character a little bit. Now, I actually did watch Smurf vlogs as well as Andre from Black Nerd Comedy and their reviews of it. Now, of course, Andre definitely does have an Archie perspective because he's a huge fan of the comics. And then you have Smurf, who is really ship heavy. Now, I'm kind of rolling with Smurf for the fact that there's really no endearing trait when it comes to Archie. Archie's the most arbitrary character on the entire show. There's nothing really interesting about him except for this affair. And honestly, I don't like how they do his makeup because he looks like a freaking corpse. Like, seriously, he looks like he's dying. And I'm not saying that just to be rude. I'm being honest. Dude looks like a corpse. A little bit too much foundation. But other than that, I'm going to move on from there. There were a lot of interesting twists and turns in this episode. Not just so much the main subplot of this episode was about Grundy. They did kind of veer off in multiple directions. My favorite scene of all definitely was the scene with the sheriff and his son Kevin. And of course, Kevin is the first gay character in Archie comics. I did not know that, and like I said before, I don't know much about Archie. I'm learning as I go with some of these new characters. I only know the main four: Jughead, Betty, Veronica, and Archie. Those are the only guys that I know. But other than that, it was nice to actually see that scene where his dad, who was the sheriff, it looks like it was pretty much already acknowledged the fact that his dad knew that his son was gay, but he didn't really act like a spaz about it. Like he actually was pretty understanding and open to his son being gay, and he still loved his son. And you can kind of tell that how much they had a heart to heart. It's like don't go riding around with boys. It's dangerous out there. Don't go riding around cruising for boys. It's dangerous out there. I like that. I like that. It looked like he accepted his son for who he was, and I'm like, yeah, you go. And that's a real heartwarming scene for me. I mean, I don't know. I liked it. I enjoyed it, and it made me feel uncomfortable. I actually, it got me right here. It got me right here, man. But other than that, the biggest takeaway that I had of the entire episode definitely was, okay, two things. Number one, Veronica's dad is a hustler. Not only that, he is literally a soprano in jail that is still got money, still moving his money around, and dude's in jail for embezzlement. That dude is a straight up hardcore hustler. That's all I can say about that. She actually comes from a family of hustlers. Her mom's a bigger hustler. Now I can kind of tell why Betty's mom don't like her, but then I can also see that even though her mom does what she got to do for what, she does favors for her husband or for her ex. I don't know if they're still married, but even though she does favors for her husband, she knows that, I think she knows the difference between right and wrong, but she also knows that what her husband did brought to her. Like, her husband pretty much gave her the finer things of life because of what he was doing, and she's aware of that, which is even scarier and sad at the same time. And I know Veronica probably hates her life even more for the fact that she knows that her dad is running things in jail, and he's the one that was responsible for buying the land and literally bulldozing the old drive-in. And they're also the ones that actually hired the Southside Serpents to literally solicit that land and make it so uninhabitable, not inhabitable, but make it so unvisitable, unwatchable, uninhabitable, I guess you could probably say that, to where it literally turned off a lot of people and they were able to buy the land for cheap. And he literally sunk every ounce of their savings into it. Usually you would think that somebody who is in jail for embezzlement would have their entire, would literally have their assets frozen. That's just me. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much about this here. And also the fact that you literally had Betty literally broke into Miss Grundy's car just to expose her for the fraud she was. But that chick had a Slim Jim. She busted out with a Slim Jim, picked the car, it even picked the lock. And she said she learned that from Nancy Drew. Oh, please. Come on, man. I don't know, man. I can literally see Betty making a trip to juvenile hall for one time. One trip to juvenile hall, and then she's like completely clean. I can see that happening. And it's all for Archie, man. And yes, Betty has become really obsessed with Archie. I don't know why. And honestly, it's kind of weird because from knowing the Archie comics, we know that the Triangle is the biggest ship of the entire comic book series. We know this. They even had spin-offs to where Betty and Archie got married. Then they had spin-offs to where Betty and Veronica both married Archie. That was literally the biggest ship of the entire comic. And we got Betty that is crazy for Archie, who is crazy for his music teacher, and only put Betty in the friend zone. This chick is willing to break into a car and literally take his girlfriend-ish, booty call-ish, teacher, whatever stuff to prove that she's a fraud. Wow. Obsessed much? Yes. Yes, she is. But other than that, I will say that maybe it's probably not so much the obsession of her still having feelings for Archie. It's so much so the fact that she's also his best friend too. And when you're a best friend and you're in love with your best friend, even though your best friend rejects you, you're still a best friend first and foremost. And I think that kind of kicked in too as well. She probably has feelings for Archie, but the best friend ain't kicked in the most, in my humble opinion. But that's still, I don't know, I guess that's maybe a felony, but other than that, I'm going to move on from there. Now, the biggest takeaway that I had is not only the fact that, well, I keep saying the biggest takeaway, but there may be another takeaway here. Kevin's pretty much the only person on the entire show that has a decent love life. Sure, you could probably say about gosh, the guy that he was with the at the river with. I can't remember his name. For those that know his name, leave in the comments. But he was making out with his girlfriend Midge, and I guess at the time he was bi-curious, but then that's when he kind of dropped him. But even though he was heartbroken about that, he ended up making out with a Southside serpent named Joaquin. I mean, at first we thought that he was getting beaten up, but then I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't think he was getting beaten up at all. That dude got slammed against that fence. We've all experienced it. We've all had that experience in high school where we kissed our boyfriend against the fence. We've had that moment, and I'm not trying to be dirty here. I'm just being honest. We had that moment where we have kissed our boyfriends or girlfriends against the fence. We know that the fence. I'm not gonna go too much into that. But other than that, I'm just gonna say this. I know that he wasn't getting hurt. I was just surprised that Joaquin was gay. But the thing is the fact they were actually keeping a secret for both of them, that Joaquin happened to be a part of this gang, and that he happened to be the sheriff's son, and he's the only person on the show with a love life. That's jacked up, man. Nobody on this show has a love life except for Kevin. What? And you can't even say the same thing about Archie and Grundy. We knew that was going to end eventually, because somebody was going to get pissed, and then they were going to have to end it soon. We knew that was going to happen. But seriously, nobody is in a relationship from the main characters. The main characters are not in a relationship at all. Veronica doesn't have a boyfriend, and neither does Betty. She's chasing after Archie. But I did see Smurf's video, and there is a possible rumor and also some footage that she might be dating Jughead, and I'm rooting for that. I'm so rooting for that because Jughead will pretty much be the best person. And you saw that look. For those that actually in the scene where they were at Pops, and when Betty was talking about Rebel Without a Cause, and Jughead looked back and smirked, I'm telling you, Jughead likes Betty. And I'm hoping that this happens. I'm hoping that this ship comes around, because we need to have a good ship on the show. There's not one. And don't get me wrong, I don't go by just ships for these shows. I absolutely love substance to them. And even though the mystery angle of this show is amazing, and even though all the characters are amazing, I would love to see a romantic ship or two. And the only ship I can't even say it's a ship right now. It's more like a makeout session. Like, seriously, you can't really say that Kevin and Joaquin is a ship, because they aren't dating. They just made out. There's no ships on the show if you honestly think about it. And I would love for the first ship to be Jughead and Betty. Something different. We know eventually it's not gonna last. We know it. But I want it to be like the most amazing one. I'm just rooting for those guys. But speaking of Jughead, the biggest takeaway, and I am going to the big takeaway here, is that Jughead is homeless. I was shocked. He lived in the drive-in. That's why he was fighting so hard to keep it up. And even though that Veronica's mom and Veronica's dad bought out the land as the anonymous buyer with the help of the mayor, who is as shifty can be, he was living there in the drive-in by himself. But here's my takeaway of it. I really do believe that Jughead, this is just my theory, and I'm throwing it out there here. I believe that Jughead was a Southside serpent. I think at one time he was rolling in the game with his dad, and I don't know what happened between Jughead's mom and his little sister Jellybean, but you saw the fact that he actually keeps her picture around, and he folded it, which means he carries it wherever he goes as a memory, possibly. Something must have happened to Jellybean that caused the family to completely just break apart and just have a huge rift between them. That is just my overall theory. I believe that something really bad happened to Jellybean, and it just broke the parents apart. And instead of Jughead wanting to live with his mom, he ended up rolling with his dad, saw what his dad did, and lived out on his own. And the fact that his dad isn't helping him, wow, that speaks volumes for me. But he might care a little bit. But the fact is that he's probably into the whole gang life. Jughead don't want that. He wants to be in school, and he wants to be able to actually be a decent person. So he wants to separate himself from that. Lord knows where his mom is. And I would love to find out what really happened to Jughead's mom, and whether or not Jughead's mom is aware of all this, and in fact she's going to actually try to help him. I would love for that to happen. I would love to actually see Jughead's mom finally and find out what happened to this guy. And who knows, this might be the actual sympathy angle that might get Betty to like him more. Who knows? It just feels like there's so much more of a connection going on between Betty. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I feel like this may be a possible connection for Betty and Jughead to get together. I'm hoping so, because I'm not really such a big fan of Archie. There's not really much of an endearing trait about him. He's more of an arbitrary douche. That's just how I pretty much see him at this point. I don't really see this guy as chaseable. I don't. But that's just me personally. My overall thoughts of this episode is this. This episode was average, but it still was a really good episode. And honestly, and yes, I guess I can probably say amazing. And I say amazing because of this. There are a lot of angles that can actually piece together. There are more things that can come together in this subplot of an episode than the main plot itself. And as for Cheryl Blossom, she shouldn't have been there at all. I know that Cheryl Blossom is only there to tie in what's going on with the murder of Jason Blossom, and just to tie in the fact that, yes, this is his twin. Jason Blossom is still dead. You know, this is pretty much why she's here. But I'm hoping that I was really I just didn't want her to be there because it made no sense. It didn't. Not to me. But other than that, it wasn't a bad episode. It's a very Grundy heavy episode. But honestly, I really was hoping that they kind of just jaded away. Well, not jaded away, but just kind of pushed away the main plot for a little while and just went to something different. But other than that, this wasn't a bad episode. I enjoyed it. What about you? Leave in the comments below. Let me know how you feel about this episode. And also, I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Chapter 5. I'm still confused about what they put in there for the actual trailer. But I'm still curious. But other than that, guys, did you see Riverdale? Do you like it? What do you think about it? Leave in the comments below. And I'm out of here. Peace out.